Her shoes slipped in the frozen slush as headlights pierced the dark. She stood soaked and trembling, clutching a briefcase like it held her last hope. "Need a ride?" Ryan asked through the open window. She hesitated. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Before you freeze." Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The wind off Lake Michigan cut like a blade, turning the highway into a gray ribbon of ice and salt. Ryan Mitchell kept both hands locked on the steering wheel of his rusty Ford, jaw clenched, eyes stinging from exhaustion. Tomorrow morning was his last shot. A job interview in a downtown glass tower. One of those companies people only whispered about when they talked about real money. Ryan didn't want money. Not greed money. Just steady money. Heat in the apartment without juggling overdue notices. Groceries without counting coins. A winter coat for his 8-year-old daughter, Ellie, that didn't have tape on the zipper. The fuel light glowed orange. "Please, just get me home," he muttered, as if the truck could hear him. Then his headlights caught something that made his foot lift off the gas. A woman stood on the shoulder where the slush rose like dirty snowbanks. She wasn't dressed for this weather. Thin coat, dark pants soaked through, heels sinking into ice. One hand clutched a leather briefcase to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Ryan swallowed. People didn't stand like that unless something had gone wrong, or something was chasing them. His mind fired through reasons to keep driving. Low fuel, late hour, Ellie waiting, the city full of trouble. He'd learned the hard way that helpful could get you hurt. 2 years ago, he tried to do the right thing at his factory job, reported unsafe wiring after a worker got burned. The company didn't fix the wiring. They fixed the problem by firing Ryan and quietly making sure other places weren't hiring him. Doing the right thing had cost him everything. And still, the woman's shoulders shook so hard it looked painful. Ryan's truck drifted onto the shoulder before he even decided. Tires crunched. He rolled the window down and immediately regretted it. Cold knifed into the cab. "Hey," he called. "You need a ride?" Her head snapped toward him, eyes sharp despite the tremble in her lips. Blonde hair plastered to her cheek, mascara faintly smudged. She looked like she belonged in a warm office with bright lights, not in slush on an empty highway. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice soft, like kindness from a stranger was a language she didn't trust. Ryan exhaled. "Yeah. Hop in before you freeze." She hesitated half a second too long, glancing over her shoulder as if listening for an engine that wasn't there. Then she yanked the passenger door open and climbed in, shivering so violently the seatbelt clicked against the door. The smell of rain and faint perfume filled the cab. Ryan cranked the heater higher, though the truck protested with a groan. "You're soaked," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're going to get sick out here." Her fingers tightened on the briefcase. "Better than missing my meeting." Ryan frowned. "Meeting? At this hour?" She didn't answer immediately, just stared forward, breathing shallowly, as if she was forcing herself not to fall apart. "Where to?" he asked. She hesitated, then named an upscale district downtown, expensive enough that even the streetlights looked cleaner. Ryan almost laughed. "That's a long way from here." "I'll pay," she said quickly, as if expecting him to change his mind. Ryan's eyes flicked to the fuel gauge again. He shouldn't. He really shouldn't. But then she flinched at something outside. Just a shadow, probably nothing. And Ryan felt something hard settle in his chest. "No," he said. "Keep your money. I'll get you there." Her gaze slid to him, suspicious and searching. "Why?" Ryan shrugged, forcing a rough half-smile. "Because someone should." They drove in silence, the heater hissing, wipers scraping. The city grew closer, lights smearing across the wet windshield like scattered diamonds. Every few minutes the woman's hand shifted on the briefcase, like she was checking it was still there. Like it mattered more than her phone, her purse, more than her own comfort. A few miles later, Ryan saw a diner with warm yellow windows cutting through the winter dark. "You eaten?" he asked. Her lips parted, then closed again. "No. I'm stopping," he said, already turning in. Warm food first. Inside, the smell of coffee and grilled onions wrapped around them like a blanket. The waitress, older, tired eyes, kind hands, looked at Ryan with recognition. He was here sometimes, when he could afford it. "Two specials?" she asked, then glanced at the woman like she was trying to place her. "Yeah," Ryan said. "And whatever soup's hottest." The woman sat stiffly, like she was waiting for a trap. But when the bowl arrived, she wrapped her hands around it, and her shoulders finally dropped a fraction. Her eyes shimmered once, just once, before she looked away. "You didn't have to," she murmured. Ryan pulled cash from his wallet and counted it carefully, making sure he still had enough for gas tomorrow. He hated that she saw him do it. Hated that pride had to fight survival in public. He slid the bills under the receipt anyway. "I've been hungry before," he said simply. "I know what cold does to a person." She studied him for a long beat. Then, quieter, "What's your name?" "Ryan." A pause. "Thank you, Ryan." Outside the diner window, a dark sedan rolled past slowly, almost crawling. Ryan barely noticed, until the woman's spine went rigid and her hand snapped down on the briefcase like a lid on fire. Then she forced her face smooth again, like she'd practiced hiding fear. And Ryan understood something that made his stomach tighten. This wasn't just bad luck on a winter road. This woman wasn't just stranded. She was running. Ryan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing in that slush, thin coat, shaking hands. That briefcase held like a life jacket. And the way she'd said good luck tomorrow. Not like a stranger, but like someone who already knew how the day would end. Morning came hard and gray. Ellie's small arms wrapped around his waist before school, her voice muffled against his jacket. "Don't forget," she whispered. "You promised we'll get pancakes when you get the job." Ryan forced a smile. When? Not if. Downtown Chicago looked like a different planet compared to their cracked apartment block. Glass towers, polished sidewalks, people who walked fast like they owned the air. Ryan stood outside the same building he dropped her off at, clutching his resume folder so tight his fingers went numb. Inside, the lobby gleamed, marble floors, steel columns, a fountain that looked like it cost more than his truck. A receptionist with a perfect bun glanced at his name and nodded like she'd been waiting. "Mr. Mitchell? Logistics interview. Here's your badge." Ryan exhaled. "Thanks." She pointed toward the elevators. "Top floor. You'll be meeting with the CEO herself." Ryan stopped mid-step. "The CEO?" "That's correct," she said pleasantly. "MS. Evelyn Hart personally approves all hires in the department." His stomach dropped as if the marble floor had turned into ice. The elevator climbed in silence. Numbers ticked upward. Ryan's borrowed tie felt like a noose. He tried to tell himself it was coincidence, that thousands of people worked in the city, that the woman from the highway could have been anyone. But his gut already knew. The doors opened into a quiet corridor lined with modern art and soft carpet. At the end, double doors stood slightly ajar. Ryan stepped in, and there she was. Not shivering, not drenched, not lost. Evelyn Hart sat behind a wide walnut desk like it was a throne she didn't need to prove she deserved. Navy suit tailored perfectly, hair pulled back smooth. A calm expression, but her eyes were the same guarded ones from the roadside. She rose, walked around the desk, and offered her hand. "Mr. Mitchell," she said evenly, almost amused. "We meet again." Ryan's throat went dry. "You're the CEO," she finished, as if the word was nothing. "Yes." Ryan shook her hand, and for a second he felt embarrassed, not because she was powerful, but because he'd seen her at her most human. Cold, afraid, trying not to break. "I didn't know," he managed. "That's exactly why it mattered," Evelyn replied. "You helped without asking who I was, without negotiating, without trying to win anything." She gestured toward the chair across from her. "Sit." Ryan sat, still trying to make his brain catch up. Evelyn folded her hands. "Your resume is fine. You have experience, you've been bounced around, you've got a gap." Her gaze sharpened. But character is harder to find than experience. Ryan's jaw tightened. He remembered the factory, the smell of burnt plastic, the supervisor's smile when Ryan reported the exposed wires. Then the downsizing. Then the quiet phone calls that never came back. "I didn't lose my last job because I was lazy," Ryan said, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. "I did the right thing. It just wasn't profitable for them." For the first time, Evelyn's composure slipped. Not sympathy exactly, something closer to recognition. Like she knew that kind of punishment. "Honesty can be expensive," she said softly. Then her tone changed. "Which is why I'm going to test yours." She pressed a button on her desk. A wall screen flickered to life, displaying a shipping manifest, routes highlighted in red, numbers flashing like an emergency heartbeat. "We have a crisis," Evelyn said. "A medical supply contract. If we miss delivery, a major hospital network loses critical stock. People could die. And if we fail publicly," she paused. "My board has been waiting for an excuse." Ryan stared at the screen. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because it's happening right now," Evelyn answered. "And because someone inside this building caused it." Ryan's skin prickled. Evelyn slid a folder across the desk, printed emails, timestamps, a list of route changes authorized under a supervisor's login. "That login belongs to my VP of operations," she said. "He claims he was asleep." Ryan scanned the paperwork, instincts kicking in the way they used to on the factory floor, when you had to spot the real problem before management blamed the wrong person. He leaned forward, tracing the route changes with his finger. "These edits aren't random. Whoever did this wanted the trucks to hit the worst weather pockets and the worst traffic choke points." He looked up, but they also wanted it to look like incompetence, not sabotage. Evelyn didn't blink. "Go on." Ryan pointed to a small detail, a warehouse code repeated twice. "This is the key. Someone rerouted through a facility that can't handle refrigerated medical freight. Even if the trucks arrive on time, the cargo spoils. That's not an accident." Silence filled the office, thick as snow. Evelyn slowly stood. "What would you do?" Ryan's mind raced. "Bypass that facility. Split the load. Use 2 smaller hubs on the outskirts. Less glamorous, but they have cold storage. And you need a driver escort or police clearance through the south corridor, or they'll get stuck behind road closures." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, calculating. "And if the VP objects?" Ryan swallowed. "Then you're not dealing with a VP problem. You're dealing with a criminal one." Evelyn's gaze held his, sharp, assessing, almost relieved. Then, very quietly, she said something that made Ryan's blood run cold. "The briefcase you saw last night wasn't mine." Ryan blinked. "What?" Evelyn stepped closer to the window, looking down at the city like it was a chessboard. "It was evidence," she said. "And the people who want it back saw me get into your truck." Ryan felt the weight of her words settle in his chest like ice. "Evidence," he repeated. "Against who?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She stood at the window, arms folded, watching traffic crawl far below. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked tired, not physically, but the kind of tired that comes from carrying too much alone. "Against people who hide behind titles," she said finally. "People who believe contracts matter more than lives." Ryan thought of the emails in the folder. The deliberate rerouting. The spoiled cargo. Hospitals waiting on deliveries that might never come. "You're saying this crisis wasn't just sabotage," he said slowly. "It was leverage." Evelyn turned back to him. "Exactly." She pressed another button on her desk. The screen shifted. Bank transfers, shell companies, a web of arrows connecting subsidiaries that meant nothing on paper, but everything in practice. "My VP of operations isn't incompetent," she said. "He's ambitious. And desperate. Someone offered him a way out. Money, protection, a seat on another board. If this company failed publicly." Ryan let out a low breath. "And the briefcase?" "Internal audit files," Evelyn replied. "Proof of how they've been bleeding suppliers dry and falsifying compliance reports. Enough to ruin careers." Ryan's stomach tightened. He remembered the dark sedan passing the diner window. The way Evelyn's hand had snapped down like she was protecting something alive. "You didn't just break down on the highway," he said. "You were dumped there." A faint smile touched her mouth. "I jumped out before they could decide what to do with me." Silence stretched between them, heavy but honest. "Why tell me this?" Ryan asked. "You barely know me." Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. "Because you didn't ask me who I was when it mattered. And because you have nothing to gain by lying for me." Ryan laughed once, bitter and short. "You don't know my life very well." "I know enough," she said quietly. "You have a daughter. You stopped for a stranger when you couldn't afford to. You paid for food you needed yourself." She slid a badge across the desk. "Temporary. Plain. No title yet. I need someone outside the usual power circle," Evelyn said. "Someone who understands systems from the ground up, not from a boardroom slide deck. Someone who won't look the other way when it's inconvenient." Ryan stared at the badge. The weight of choice pressed in from all sides. "If I help you," he said carefully, "those people won't just come after you. They'll come after me. After my kid." Evelyn's expression softened, not with pity, but respect. "I won't pretend there's no risk." but I can protect you better inside this building than you ever could on the outside. Ryan thought of Ellie, her taped zipper, her quiet trust when she said when, not if. He straightened. Then we do this clean, he said. No cover-ups. No scapegoats. Evelyn nodded. Agreed. They worked fast. Ryan coordinated reroutes, called smaller facilities he'd dealt with years ago, spoke to drivers like they were people, not numbers. Within an hour, trucks were moving again. The red alerts on the screen faded one by one. But relief didn't come. A knock cut through the room. Evelyn's assistant stepped in, pale. MS. Hart. Security flagged a vehicle that's been circling the block since early morning. Same one from last night's report. Ryan's jaw tightened. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone, locked down the executive floor, and get legal up here. The assistant hesitated. And Mr. Mitchell? Evelyn glanced at Ryan, really looked at him. He stays, she said. He's part of this now. Down on the street, the dark sedan idled, exhaust curling into the winter air. And Ryan realized something unsettling. The kindness that had saved a stranger last night had just placed him directly in the path of everything she'd been running from. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel regret. He felt ready. The lockdown changed the building's atmosphere instantly. What had felt like quiet confidence moments earlier turned tense and watchful. Security personnel appeared at corridor corners. Phones buzzed. Somewhere above them, helicopters thudded through the gray winter sky. News or corporate, Ryan couldn't tell. Evelyn moved with practiced calm, but Ryan noticed the small things. The way she kept her back to the wall, the way her eyes tracked reflections in the glass. Legal will try to slow this down, she said as she paced. They always do. Delay is a shield. Then we don't give them time, Ryan replied. She stopped. What are you thinking? Ryan took a breath. We release part of the evidence. Just enough. Internally. To the board in compliance. Make it impossible to bury. Evelyn's eyebrows lifted slightly. That will start a war. It already has, Ryan said. You just finally stopped pretending it hadn't. A tense half-smile flickered across her face. All right. Show me how a man from the factory floor fights. They worked side by side, not as CEO and applicant, but as two people pushing against a system that had punished honesty for too long. Ryan flagged inconsistencies the auditors had missed, patterns that only showed up when you'd lived inside broken systems. Evelyn authorized access, her signature opening doors that had been locked for years. Then the door burst open. The VP of operations stood there, face flushed, tie loosened, eyes sharp with something close to panic. Two security guards hovered behind him. This is a mistake, he snapped. You're letting an outsider. Evelyn cut him off. You rerouted medical freight through an unlicensed facility during a winter emergency. His gaze flicked to Ryan, calculating. You don't understand corporate pressure. Ryan stood. I understand choosing profit over people. I understand lying because you think no one will get hurt. The VP scoffed. You're nobody. Ryan felt the old sting, the same word that had followed him out of the factory gates years ago. Nobody. Disposable. Evelyn stepped forward. He's the reason your sabotage failed, she said coldly. And the reason your career ends today. The VP's confidence cracked. You can't prove intent. Evelyn lifted the briefcase Ryan now recognized instantly. She opened it. Inside were signed approvals. Private messages. A paper trail so clean it was damning. You already did, she said. Security escorted the man out as his protests dissolved into threats. The room felt suddenly quieter, emptier, like after a storm passes but leaves damage behind. Evelyn closed the briefcase slowly. Now comes the part where this costs us, she said. Ryan nodded. It always does. The board meeting that followed was brutal. Arguments. Accusations. Thinly veiled attempts to protect reputations. Ryan wasn't supposed to speak, but when he did, the room went still. He didn't talk about strategy or margins. He talked about drivers who slept in their trucks to make deliveries. About hospitals waiting on shipments that never came. About what happens when everyone assumes someone else will do the right thing. By the end, the vote was unanimous. The fallout hit fast. Media leaks, stock dips, lawsuits, and threats, quiet ones, indirect ones, but they were there. That night, Ryan walked out into the freezing dark, shoulders tight, phone heavy in his pocket. Ellie's voice answered on the first ring. Did you get the job? Ryan closed his eyes. Not exactly, he said softly. But I think things are going to change. As he hung up, he saw the dark sedan again, this time parked farther away, less confident. For the first time, it didn't scare him. It reminded him why he couldn't turn back now. Snow fell thicker that night, softening the sharp edges of the city. Chicago looked quieter, almost forgiving, as Ryan stepped out of the tower for the last time that day. His breath fogged in the cold air, but inside his chest, something felt lighter than it had in years. Evelyn joined him at the curb, her coat pulled tight, briefcase finally gone, turned over to federal investigators hours earlier. Sirens echoed somewhere in the distance, distant and fading. It started, she said. The investigation. The resignations. The lawsuits. Ryan nodded. You okay? She considered the question, then answered honestly. I will be. I forgot what it felt like to trust my own judgment. Last night reminded me. They stood in silence, snow collecting on their shoulders. About the job, Evelyn said at last. The position you applied for doesn't exist anymore. Ryan smiled faintly. I figured. I dismantled the department, she continued. Too many rotten beams. I'm rebuilding it, from the ground up. She handed him a new badge. Permanent. Clean. A title that made his stomach twist. Director of Operations Integrity. Ryan stared at it, stunned. That's not entry level. No, Evelyn said. It's essential. Salary, benefits, security detail if you want it. And flexibility, for your daughter. Images rushed through his mind. Ellie's worn coat. The empty fridge. The way she pretended not to notice when he skipped meals. He swallowed hard. I don't want this because I helped you, he said quietly. I don't want charity. Evelyn met his eyes. Good. Then take it because you earned it. Because you told the truth when it hurt. Because you stopped when everyone else would have driven past. Ryan looked up at the falling snow, letting it melt on his lashes. I accept, he said. Weeks passed. The city buzzed with headlines, but inside Ryan's small apartment, life changed in quieter ways. A new winter coat hung by the door, Ellie's laughter filling the room when she zipped it easily. Pancakes happened. So did heat that stayed on all night. Ryan walked Ellie to school one crisp morning, her hand warm in his glove. You kept your promise, she said. So did you, Ryan replied. You believed. At work, Ryan didn't play politics. He listened. He asked uncomfortable questions. Some people resented him for it. Others, quiet ones, honest ones, began to trust him. And Evelyn. She remained formidable, but different. Less alone. Sometimes they stayed late, reviewing reports, sharing coffee instead of silence. There was no rush. No debt between them. Just mutual respect, earned the hard way. One evening, as winter began to loosen its grip, Ryan drove past the stretch of highway where it had all begun. The slush was gone, replaced by clean snowbanks glowing under streetlights. He slowed, looking at the empty shoulder. Kindness, he realized, wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up when it was inconvenient, when it cost something. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to stop, it didn't just change one life. It changed everything. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.